Okay, this is our second video. Let's see how quickly we can get through this. We are going to start a new project. And we're going to create a web ASP.NET application. And let's call this one registration. See if I spelled that right, registration. And we'll go ahead and click OK. And we'll select an MVC. And right here, let's hit change authentication, individual user accounts. This is going to import identity for us. We'll just leave it as is on this one, and we'll import the identity, which actually brings in entity with it when we create it. We don't need to worry about Azure, so cancel that. Okay, and we've got our new system up here. Notice that entity framework is already in here. So what we're going to go in here is we're going to do, we're going to add a model here. So add a new C# class. We'll do student. And something I don't normally do is, paste the class and the context into the same class. One thing we'll need to do here is make sure that we, again, import that namespace. So we've got using system.data.entity, and we are good to go there. Awesome. Let's build that really quick, make sure we don't have any problems. It built just fine, so we are good to go. Okay, now that we've got all this, what are we going to do? Well, with MVC, it's really cool because we can get access to edit and view this data within seconds. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up here, right-click on our controllers folder. Let's go to Add. And we're going to say a new scaffolded item. That's very important. New scaffolded item. We're going to go to MVC5 controller with views using entity framework. And here we're going to pick a model class. So our model class is the only class that we currently have. We have a student registration model, and I guess we do have other models, but they were brought in from identity. So the only one that we've created is the student registration model, and we have our student context that we're going to use as well. So we need to say what model class we want to scaffold, and it says we're going to look at an entity or the model class, and it's going to give you all the HTML and code to be able to edit, delete, create new ones, all those different things. It's really cool. So we're going to do the student registration or student model class, the student context. If we want to add an additional data context here, Visual Studio will create this. It will send it over to the config file, which we're not going to do right now. So hit cancel. And then we'll click add. All right, now we have a new controller here, the students controller. And if you go down here, we can see under students we have create, delete, details, edit, and index. So we're all good to go. Let's go ahead and build this up. We're good. Okay, let's run that. There it is. First name, last name. If we hit create new, we can enter a first name, last name, hit create. Easy as pie. It created it in the database for us. Create new. We'll add another one. Added it right in there. We can get the details and go back to the list. We can edit them. and it edits for us. So, super easy, super simple, and we did it all in a matter of seconds. So that's what scaffolding is. Okay, so now we're going to figure out, how does Entity Framework connect to your database? I didn't use a connection string, so where's the database? It could be in the cloud, it could be in the app_data folder, it could be the internet, or it could be some other folder, it could be SQL Server on your in your data center. So it could be in many different places. So the way that Entity Framework is going to check is going to say, hey, do you have a connection string or the name of a connection string? For example, in our web config or application config file, there's a connection strings element in that has a name. And we give it a name such as like DB database connection or dev database connection or something like that. So Entity Framework will actually look at that in that DB context class, and it's going to look for registration string named registration connection. And if it finds that, Entity Framework is going to look in your config file for connection string named registration connection. And if it finds that, it's going to open a connection to the database. And if it doesn't find the connection, then it's going to use the actual name of your context class. So in our case, it's going to be the student context, and it's going to use the name of the class, look inside of the web config, named that. If it finds that, then it's going to do the same thing as it did before, read that connection in, and open the connection to the database. If it doesn't find anything, we don't have a connection string name, there's nothing in our web config that fits the scenarios, then it's going to look in SQL Express. So if it doesn't find SQL Express on the local system, then it's going to look for the local DB version 11 point whatever. If it doesn't find that, then it's going to look for local DB version 12, which is actually called MS SQL local DB. So what happened in our case was we didn't have a connection string name. So it looked through all the settings and it didn't have anything. Looked on the system for SQL Express, looked for local DB version 11. When we find local DB, then we'll just create a database. This bottom one is then what happened, because we didn't have anything else created for us, then it actually created that database for us on the back end. Here's a little bit of advice. You should always specify a connection string name if you intend to use a connection string in the config file. And this is really important because the intent is what's being expressed. Right now, you might run this project and wonder where these databases are being connected. If you don't want the database created for you and you're trying to make sure you use that database that you already have, make sure you specify that connection string. Otherwise, Entity Framework will go in and it will create a new database for you rather than throwing an error. And that could cause some problems for you later on down the road. So if you intend on using a connection string name later on, then make sure you utilize that in the config file up front. So this is the connection string name that you would have right inside your constructor, inside your student context class.